in time and everything else. So
And we are live. Hello and welcome. Second episode of the vCF Musketeer live stream. Hello, Yves. Oh, you
hello,
changed
Toby.
your name.
I changed my name to Yves Sandfort, a vCF Musketeer. So we will at one point in time, once we run this thing off, we will actually create merchandise around this. So
that's
there will be little ponies and other things.
little ponies. I'm in at the little pony side.
Yeah.
So, guys, last episode we stopped talking about the management domain from a deployment perspective. Still a lot to talk, a lot to do after the deployment because, yes, as we all know, VCF helps us a lot on the basic stuff, but still there are some tasks afterwards which cannot be done in the initial setup or more or less typically day two operations. So I would say we will have a look into that in the current episode. Then let's start with it. A client signed certificate. We covered this already a little bit last time, but had mentioned that we would like to have a deeper look this time into it. If we are all aware and if we are all knowing it, more and more certificate stuff comes into the whole VMware product. To be honest, it has been always there, but finally it gets executed more and more. At least when we think about our cloud director, as soon as we try since version 10.3, I think it was.
10.2 or 10.3, yes.
10.3. If we try to go with the default installer certificate, it will not work anymore. So also this is a really nice working part in the whole VCF story, that we have now the ability to centralize, manage all of our certificates, absolutely independent if we're talking about NSX, if we're talking about vCenter, SDDC Manager, the whole vRealize lifecycle management stuff. So ARIA operations lifecycle management, which is now the final name. So we have two options there. We can go with a Microsoft CA or we can go with an OpenSSL CA. So what's different there? Microsoft CA is the beauty. If you have a Microsoft CA in your environment, you can really do a fully automated approach. So you can connect your SDDC manager to the enrollment website of your Active Directory certificate authority, and automatically the whole CSR generation and this the creation of the certificate will be done automatically, and afterwards it will be replaced on your solutions or on your vCenter or on your NSX manager, wherever. Or if you say, hey, maybe you would like to go with public sign certificates, or you maybe have no Microsoft CA, then you can use the OpenSSL CA approach, which means you get the CSR from every solution. So as mentioned already, NSX, vCenter, and so on, can then go with the CSR to your public CA or to your internal but not Windows related CA, create the certificate, come back, and afterwards you need to upload the certificate file to your SDDC manager, and the SDDC manager will replace the certificate on every solution.
I think one of the important parts with all of this is, as we are looking into the certificates world, is especially if you are using public certificates, we are now in an area where you actually only get 1 year certificates. They are already talking about doing it even at smaller intervals. So it's really becoming important that you have a toolkit which actually allows you to exchange all of that. Because also there is no real option for wildcard certificates. Certain VMware products are just not compatible with wildcard certificates. And so the plus wildcard certificates by themselves impose quite a bit of a security risk, because you can much easier actually make someone believe that you are actually something out of the domain. So there are multiple good reasons to not have that. So I think it's a good approach. Most corporations, and I think that's also why the Microsoft CA is fine. I had discussions with customers who have said, why is it always Microsoft is being supported? It's like, yes, because that might just be the fact, because the majority of companies are using it. And if you are looking for an integration, you are first going to integrate with the biggest vendor on the market. And that's it. And that the only thing is what's really important here as you're getting, and this is more a warning in general, is like, take the definition and the design of your CA very serious. It should not actually, a good sign of that something is wrong is if your primary CA is actually just sitting on your domain controller. That is a good sign for a non-proper design. There are a few other things. It's like, take it serious, because when you, especially as we are talking about higher cyber risks and everything else, as we are depending on that these certificates are really proving that all the systems are intact, if someone can impersonate these systems, it's like you're basically doomed, because you have no chance to actually see what's going on anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
And also, so as a preparation of today's episode, I was looking into the feature request side for vCF, and I figured out that the Let's Encrypt part, it has been there since ages, but now it really has become more and more a really demanding point. So I assume, but also as we mentioned it, we are also talking sometimes of our personal assumptions. I assume that maybe Let's Encrypt as a certificate solution could be possible there in kind of the next releases. Let's see what's going on there. So the next one is a funny one, because it can be easily mislead or can be misleading here. Some interesting points. NSX routing for the management domain. So what is mentioned there? There is the opportunity we get with using NSX in the management domain has always been there for only ARIA operations products. So for ARIA operations for log, ARIA operations for just the native ARIA operations, the whole ARIA Lifecycle Manager, and also the visualize ARIA automation products and stuff like this can be utilized on one hand overlay networks, on the other hand VLAN-backed networks, or, and this is something which is absolutely new with the release of 5.1, we can also utilize now traditional VLAN-backed port groups. So this is here the chapter we need to talk about. So the idea behind is, if you go and use the whole ARIA stuff, which is now already included in the vCF base license, and you say, hey, I would like to utilize then NSX in my management domain as well, then you can select here the overlay backed stuff, but only the ARIA environment is affected. So there will not be any kind of routing for your ESXi host or for your vCenter stuff. So this needs to be done absolutely the physical world. Otherwise, we will quickly run into a chicken egg problem, because if my vCenter and my NSX is not there, maybe my routing is not working, and then my whole management domain is not working as expected. So that is what the idea behind using NSX routing for the management domain is, only the whole affecting the whole ARIA stuff. The same is there for NSX Federation for the management domain. So as soon if we decide, okay, we have the use case to go with an stretched management domain, and then we would like to utilize just a single environment from an NSX perspective, as we mentioned it already last time, that we can utilize NSX Federation vCF as well. We then have the possibility to have just a single federated NSX environment for my management domain, but also for my workload domains, which brings me into the possibility that we can have then more or less a mixed management workload domain. So let's call it this way, but I don't think that this is really often a case that the customer says, hey, I would like to have just a single NSX environment across my whole vCF world.
I think these are most likely for specific use cases being developed. And I think it also has something to do, because what you will figure out when we looked at some of the very large projects, which we did, for example, in the military space in the last couple of years, which were massive from a count perspective, you are hitting maximum numbers you have never thought about, where you think it's like, yeah, but I can do 40,000 VMs. It's like, yes, but the amount of port groups and ports and this and that, and there is a lot you still need to check for that. And so this is why you need to be very careful.
Yeah.
And also, just quickly talking about stretched, and I think we mentioned that already in one of the previous episodes, but if you want to stretch a workload domain, your management domain needs to be stretched first. This is something where I had several discussions with not only service providers, but also enterprise customers in the last, I think, 1 or 2 years already, where they is like, but we want to have the workload domain stretched because we want to be sure that our workloads are up and running. Whereas it's like, yes, but your workloads are, yes, they will still be running, but in general, in the first place, they are completely useless if your management cluster is down, because in a modern world where you really, and if you are using vCF, you are really using an SDDC. And if you are utilizing an SDDC, you are using NSX, you are using vSAN and all these pieces. So as soon as your vCenters are gone for a longer period, you are running in all kinds of problems. Clearly, you can bring it back from a backup perspective. Is that going to really work? And all of these scenarios. So I think this is a good idea where VMware clearly says it's like, if you want to have a stretched workload domain, you need to have a stretched management domain. It really protects customers from designing something which is not a good idea in the first place.
Because at least when we're thinking about having a stretched workload domain with an M plus whatever or 1 plus whatever failover scenario, and then I don't have the ability to manage the whole environment afterwards, will not work. So clearly, that's something I would say this cannot be a proper solution. This is nothing which is there from a working perspective.
Yeah.
Talking about stretched management domain, this is something which currently is only supported on ESA. On OSA, not on ESA. So also here, that's the beauty of the Excel. If you try to do something which is currently not supported, you immediately get red flag into your selecting box. So okay, let's change it here to OSA. And as you can see, I can now stretch my management domain as well. But also there, the initial bring up, so that the part which will be done by the Cloud Builder appliance, we will cover the Cloud Builder appliance in one of the next episodes. Let's see which number. The Cloud Builder appliance itself will only ramp up the first 4 hosts and do not do any kind of stretching, or will not do any kind of stretching. This is something we need to do afterwards from the SDDC manager perspective. So this is something we should also have in mind. Okay, originating only 4 hosts will be utilized for the initial bring up. Afterwards, you can go into your SDDC manager and can stretch your management domain if you would like to do this.
But it was a good example on what we say to people who currently come and say, it's like, how do I best learn really vCF and vCF dependencies and all of this? You do not need to deploy the whole stack the whole time. This Excel spreadsheet is a good exercise. Just come up with scenarios you want to build, and then you actually go into that Excel spreadsheet and actually try to set up the complete combination. This is also, for example, something we do in ComDivision when we train new people on how to do vCF pieces. Is like, here are a few scenarios, go and fill out the Excel spreadsheet on how you would need that, and actually create me like a hardware bill of material, because it is important to do that ideally in that specific order. You first actually define in here what you are going to do. That basically brings you your host count and what you need, and then we are going shopping. Not the other way around, because if you do shopping the other way around, you're going to buy it multiple times, because as we just saw, it's like just the storage architecture by itself could already be an issue. And there are other pieces as well. It's like, how many networks do we need? But we will get to that. So it's a great game. This Excel really gives you good insights. It's like, hey, if you do this, you can't do that.
Absolutely. So the next part is talking about ARIA Suite and also VCF aware Workspace ONE Access. We will talk a little bit more about Workspace ONE Access because there is still something where Workspace ONE Access could be mandatory. So, but let's start with the first one, ARIA Suite Lifecycle Manager. And I would say, so with the new licensing, we always should include it because it is there. So
If you have now VCF Enterprise, I mean, I totally get the arguments in the past where people said it's like, yeah, I really would like to use Operations Manager, but honestly, it's too expensive for what I'm going to use it for. And this was the argument for quite a few of these tools. And I think this is going to be a game changer, not only from a product perspective, but it's also going to be a game changer for a lot of customers, because in the end, this means they finally now get all these tools, which would even in the past have made their life a lot easier. I could clearly say there are at least a few scenarios where larger customer outages could have been prevented with something like Operations Manager, because it would have shown before it's like, hey, your storage is run full. Hey, you're completely out of date on some of the hosts, and or there are some vSAN issues, or this and that. So there is tons of these scenarios, and that's why I say it's like it's good that we now have the full suite altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you just mentioned again, it is now included in the license. So why not use it? So not talking about at least if you now need to think about, yeah, but then I need more CPU, more memory. Okay, yes, maybe, but the advantages of using all of the ARIA operations product is so high that
yeah, not for all the ARIA automation.
There is already the first comment coming in, so I would say we should show it. Our Ellen is saying operations for the win, and I would absolutely say yes. That's 100% true.
Yeah, his install base all of a sudden grow dramatically, so he has a lot more customers now.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say also that Ella maybe in the future has much more work to do than he's expecting at the moment.
Yeah, he was just silently preparing for that.
Silently preparing, yeah. So with that, you get the capability that the ARIA Suite Lifecycle Manager will be deployed, and afterwards you can deploy at the moment, and then it comes already to the first interesting part. So at the moment, without Workspace ONE Access, which is the next line, we can utilize the ARIA Operations Manager, and we can utilize ARIA Operations for Log. So what formerly was known as Login Side. And the whole vRealize network, the ARIA operations network can be utilized without Workspace ONE Access. If you say, hey, but I would like to utilize kind of a single sign-on solution, and I would like to utilize ARIA automation, then at the moment you still need to deploy vCF aware Workspace ONE Access, which is now the final name. In clustered is a one-node solution. Standard is a one-node solution. Clustered is a three-node solution. So that is what we get there from an ARIA vCF aware Workspace ONE Access. I assume since the whole end-user computing stuff has been now sold, I assume that maybe ARIA automation will also change the identity provider to whatever, let's see. And then we get rid of the whole Workspace ONE Access box.
Maybe it's Okta, like in many other Broadcom products.
Maybe it will be Okta as a third party, or if what I have seen already, that more and more stuff can be utilized by the traditional vSphere single sign-on domain. Because the single sign-on, yeah, but the funny thing is, Yves, that with vCenter 8 Update 1, the Workspace ONE Access connector is running now as a container on our beloved vCenter. So they immediately filled up the vCenter with some new fancy stuff. Because the vCenter is not utilized already enough. So now the vCenter can bring in also single sign-on for all.
We are on video. I shouldn't make moves like this.
Yeah, let's see. But I would also say Okta will be something which will be deeply integrated to the whole stack. It is already integrated, to be honest. So I would also say Okta will be there in the future, more and more deeply integrated. Let's see if there will be a joint venture or whatever between Broadcom and Okta.
Maybe they are bought next.
So, and tomorrow Yves has a personal interview.
Like I just said, maybe.
Maybe.
I'm not an analyst. This is not a financial advisory to buy any shares or actually take part in any financial transaction on either the stock market or any other public market. Let me actually grab the legal guy who is just standing in the door. No, so it's going to be interesting what's going to happen there. But yeah, so you need to have one at the moment. You can just actually decide.
Yeah. So as soon if you say, hey, yeah, I would like to utilize ARIA automation. Okay, at the moment we are bounded to the vCF Aware Workspace ONE Access, and then the vCF Aware Workspace ONE Access will be also utilized as a single sign-on point for your NSX manager, for your ARIA operations manager, for your ARIA operations for log. So then we really have a full single sign-on capability. So that's there out of the box. And this more or less brings us to the end of the basic design more or less, or basic steps from our management domain. So this is what we need to do from a management domain perspective. As you can see, a lot of work, and we haven't talked about sizing inputs at the moment. So we only really talked about the possible deployment options. So this is what we have from a deployment option perspective for the management domain. If you would like to add something. No,
I think that's more or less it, and I think it shows the complexity, and in reality, this takes a lot of the complexity for us as an architect away, which always reminds me of being on a podium somewhere. I think was last November, where we were also chatting about AI and a few other things, and someone said, "It's like, are you not scared to actually be out of service with all these automations and AI and everything else?" Where I said, it's like, look, if AI is clever enough to actually solve all the architecture challenges we have as of today, we are good. But that would require that the customer is in the position to actually clearly explain what they want. And as long as that's not happening, I'm pretty sure we are good. But we will see that these tools are going to make our lives easier. So the tasks of an architect, the complexity or the effort you put into an architecture is clearly changing, but there's also new pieces coming into this, because this also adds limitation factors to the design. And these are things where sometimes customers need to get around this. And so the architects become more important whenever it is not a standard deployment, whenever it comes to the point that we need to find ways to make it work and still be in a supported way. So there is still a lot to be done. But let's say the times where people could just actually take a standard design document, just copy and paste it, exchange a few words in it, and charge a fortune for it, those times are getting over, because that is no longer easily possible.
Absolutely. That's more and more moving away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I would say let's move on to the workload domain. So as we mentioned it in the last episode, if you say, hey, okay, I have to use to have a dedicated management domain and then deploy my workload domains, then you should also take care of your workload domains. Otherwise, you maybe get a management domain up and running, but no workload domain. Or you maybe oversee here some interesting stuff in your workload domain. So let's do it also the top-down approach, join the management SSO domain. So this is already something We discussed last time that there are now 3 different deployment options available in vCF. So we can have shared management and workload domain. We can have a dedicated workload domain with embedded or with joint workload domains, or we can now have isolated workload domains. So this is the part where you design or where you define what kind of workload domain would you like to have. So if you would like to create a new SSO domain, if you would like to join your existing management domain, SSO domain, or if you would like to exclude it. So exclude means that you really deploy a fully isolated environment that with an own NSX manager then needed, with an own vCenter single sign-on domain. So that's the part or the idea here behind the stuff of the SSO environment. So the next thing is the same like we have already discussed for the management domain. Host overlay networking can be utilized by an IP address pool, or can be utilized by a static environment. If we go with a static environment, we need to ensure that all of our tunnel endpoints from an NSX perspective are in the same layer 2 network. If we go with the DHCP approach, then we can also have here our tunnel endpoints in different layer 2 domains, but then need to ensure that they can communicate over our layer 3 device with at least an MTU from 1700. Yeah, as always, I would highly recommend to utilize 9K at least. vSAN OSA, ESA, NFS, VMFS on fiber channel, vVols on fiber channel, vVols on iSCSI, or vVols on NFS. So this is now the first time where we can select another storage type than vSAN. So as we discussed it in the last episode, vSAN will be always there in the management domain, but could be there in our workload domain. So as you can see, in the workload domain, you can go with an NFS data store, you can go with VMFS via fiber channel, you can go with virtual volumes on fiber channel, iSCSI, or NFS. And yes, you are reading it absolutely right. There is no VMFS on iSCSI. Please do not ask us why.
It's just not there.
It is just
That's
not
simple.
there.
It's like just leave it, take it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, this whole chapter is going to change dramatically now based on the new licensing anyway. I said this also in an interview lately where I actually said it's like, look, when we compare these prices, when someone comes in and says it's like, but vCF is actually expensive, what you need to take into consideration is if you buy HCI hardware, so hyperconverged infrastructure hardware now, where you have all the disks and everything else, you do not need an additional storage anymore. Yes, clearly the storage vendors don't like that message. And you do not necessarily need that complexity in the network anymore, because a lot of the network complexity can be run as part of the vSphere cluster. And as you are doing so, then all of a sudden the VCF pricing becomes very cheap, because you can utilize all of this. And this is also when other people in the industry currently run around and constantly keep saying it's so much more expensive, it's so much more expensive. When you look at the comparisons and when you look at the numbers, you see that they actually put in an additional storage, they put in all the networking gear on top of it again and again, where you say it's like, we can get away with simple layer 2, 3 switches. We don't need any complexity into this anymore. I'm not necessarily agreeing whether I would use this as my front-end firewall and stuff like that. That's something where, yeah, maybe I'm too old, I'm too legacy. I would still want to have a firewall box in my rack, but that's a different story that also has something to do with how am I going to deal with a complete power outage and bring back on and all these kinds of things. There are some challenges if you build all of that into NSX, but it would be possible. But again, if you do an honest comparison of all these tools, that's perfectly fine. And then people come around, it's like, yeah, but I don't like this bundling. But this bundling has been, oh, Toby gets blurry.
Oh, funny.
But all this bundling is something which a lot of other vendors do as well. It's like, in reality, storage vendors in the last couple of years did a lot of bundling in adding search software and all kinds of other additional things into it, sometimes backup software or other bits and pieces. And that is more or less the whole story of, is it connectivity issue on your side or on my side?
No, it looks like on my side, but it tells me that the connectivity is good. So, sometimes cameras are doing fancy things.
But I think those are the things. Is like when you look at this, you need to consider this. So as we are walking through these different design scenarios, we will give you advisories and hints here and there. But the point is, if you have a kind of decent storage, vVol shouldn't be a big deal for you. And I'm honest, if like we have 2023 now, if your storage vendor still can't offer you vVol, I would maybe question the whole game anyway. It's like it has so many advantages of using this. I still would say it's like VMware did a few mistakes when they originally designed it, because they gave the vendors too much freedom. At least the base rules I would have defined, they need to be identical on each one of them, because then I would have, as a customer, far more advantage. Because if I then define certain rule sets like backup and storage and amount of tierings and things like that, and attach that to a VM, and I move that from, let's say, for an example, a NetApp storage to a Dell storage to a Pure storage, it will actually apply the same rules everywhere. With the allowance that every vendor more or less decides these steps by themselves, that is actually making it, from my perspective, worse, because it actually allows us the whole advantage of vVol, or a lot of the advantages are gone due to that fact.
On one hand, that on the other hand, and this is also something I still do not understand in the year 2024, that there are,
yes, you're right.
Yeah, which is fine. That there are still storage vendors, and I don't name them, on the market, which telling us, yeah, but my VASA provider is still a virtual machine or needs to be installed on any kind of physical box. Why the hell is this not embedded in the code on your storage box? And if one and both storage processors are acting as an active solution, and as soon if one has an outage, automatically the next VASA provider can be utilized. So I still understand that many customers has fear around vVols, because they say, hey, yeah, but when my VASA provider is failing and this is a virtual machine, yeah, then, but this is not the VMware's or Broadcom's fault nowadays. This is still your storage vendor, which still has not understood how he should implement the whole vVol stuff.
Yeah, and in reality, when you look at most storages nowadays, it's an x86 standard CPU, and a lot of the components are standard anyway. They run all kinds of other software on there, so it wouldn't be a problem to run these components there as well.
Absolutely.
But let's move along. Let's not spend too much time on that.
Everything is going to be on everything. Yeah, separate VLANs for VMs and VM kernel. Also there, it is the same story like we had it in the management domain. So you have the possibility to separate your ESXi host from the management network, which is then utilized also for the vCenter. So highly recommended to separate the traffic, because then we get better access and control between vCenters and ESXis. Yeah, deploy workload domain using ESX host with external certificates. So also there, we can already utilize the certificate management. And also what is there from a workload perspective is that we can always bring in a secondary NFS storage. And talking about NFS, and since we finally mentioned iSCSI before, to be honest, and this is also there for the management domain, using iSCSI manually deployed is 100% supported and working in a vCF environment as well. So still, yes, we are talking about vCF, but you can utilize your vCF environments afterwards, like you have utilized your normal vSphere environment. To be honest, you can maybe not change, or you should not change anything, but to bring in manually an iSCSI box, yeah, why not? But always when we are talking about the Excel, you can also be ensured that there is a workflow available where you can do this automatically. So that's the important part. Everything which is already in the Excel has some kind of automatism or API-based changes there and can be utilized. The same as we have started our topic today for the management domain is there for the workload domain, using certificates, using NSX routing now for the workload domain, which really means, okay, now we are talking about our virtual VM workload. So if you say, hey, I would like to have NSX in my VI workload domain and would like to connect all of my virtual machines through NSX, then you should enable workload domain routing. And also we can have there the possibility to enable federation. And as we have talked already about, we can utilize here also the capability of the stretched cluster when we have a stretched management cluster available. Which brings us more or less to the final end of the first steps. So we have now designed our management domain, we have designed our first workload domain, and then there is some interesting part below there. So there is some validated solution. So you have a validated solution for identity and access management for a developer-ready infrastructure using VMware Cloud Foundation. It's a nice name. How you cannot utilize Tanzu.
Maybe it's not called Tanzu in the future anymore. Oopsie.
Oopsie. Private cloud automation, log management, site protection, network visibility, cloud-based workload protection, cloud-based ransomware recovery, cross-cloud mobility, and health reporting and monitoring for VMware Cloud Foundation. And the funny thing is, you can just select here deploy, which automatically will then deploy, for example, for identity and access management, as we mentioned before, the Workspace ONE Access stuff. Developer ready will enable the workload management. Identity and access management solution is then needed. So, okay, then let's deploy it. Not supported with stretched cluster. Yeah, okay, I know it. Okay, then we will not have a developer platform. Private cloud automation will deploy the whole
ARIA automation piece.
ARIA automation. Log management will then deploy vRealize operation and so on and so on. And what's really more and more interesting is that you really have here the links what each of the chapter is meaning. So, for example, let's have a look into the developer ready stuff. But then I need to stop my sharing and
share a browser.
Share screen and share the entire screen, screen number 2. So as you can see, we have now the developer ready stuff available. So also there is just the release notes in the beginning, but then there is already a detailed design from a logical design perspective, deployment specification, network design. So then you need to really have a look to the necessary steps. But the beauty of the Excel is that you really get immediately to all of the necessary components or to the necessary documents without thinking about, hey, what I would like to do, or maybe what need to take care of. It is there. Just open the link and have a deeper look into it.
Yeah, but the good part is, at least for some of these, I'm not sure if it actually does that for all of them. It also automatically configures the relationships.
And it automatically configures the relationship. Yeah.
So this takes a lot of manual work away of actually setting up all of this, but it's good to go through the guide on what it really actually does. So it's not taking away, for example, especially when we talk about ARIA automation, this is not taking away a lot of the complexity of ARIA automation. It's just actually making sure that the connectivities are there. So similar for operations manager, it's not going to really do a lot. It's actually just going to make sure that the vCenter and NSX connections are there and the management packs are there. You still need to set up your alerts, dashboards, and everything else. So there is still a lot to be done.
Yeah, and at least when it comes to site protection, disaster recovery, yeah, okay. He will deploy the whole site recovery manager stuff. He will deploy the vSphere application appliances and stuff like this. But then you need to define what should be protected, what should be done in the case of a failover, and so on and so on. So this is something which is absolutely important, that you need to be aware of. Yes, the deployment, the initial deployment will be there, but everything else needs to be done manually as well.
And keep in mind, SRM is not included in your vCF split. It's an add-on.
Which I don't get.
Yeah. I'm still not 100% sure. They never got away for SRM from this add-on or anything else perspective. I'm not 100% sure because in the past there were always talks about that there are third-party components included into it. I'm not sure if they are still there and that they might actually still cause licensing issues so that they cannot actually include it or something else.
Yeah, I would.
Nevertheless, I think this is an important step. So if you get to that level that you can actually configure or set up all these solutions, this is going to make your life a lot easier. When you think about the fact, if you were to deploy a complete VMware stack with ARIA automation, with operations manager, with all these pieces, just get these basic tasks done is so much work. And this is going to be fully automated. And it's also going to be automated to a good degree when it comes to updates and a lot of other things. So this is really going to be helpful for you as a company. And I know in the past people stepped away from vCF primarily because it's like, yeah, maybe we don't need all products and it's such a high cost for the SDDC manager and everything else. And especially those who have more or less know all tools, they are getting away cheaper. And I think there will be a much higher utilization of all the products. So when you look at the targets from Broadcom, whereas many people see is like make more money. I mean, that's the business. That's what every business is there for. As much as people hate this, but let's face it, that's the whole reason of having a corporation. Otherwise, you would have a non-profit organization. You want to make money with it. That's the main reason. But the point here is this is driving up adoption. All the meetings I had, especially with Broadcom executives in the last couple of weeks, again and again and again, is like their number one question in so many areas is like, how can we get customers to finally adopt and utilize the products they have? And I think this is really what they honestly want. They want to get the customers to really get the value out of the products. And vCF is going to be a game changer from that perspective in the enterprise space, because it will drive far more adoption to these customers. I know enough enterprise license agreements where people have bought tons of licenses which they are not utilizing. Changing because it's going to be easier to get the first steps going. Because in the past, I mean, yes, it was a lot of our business, but in the past, if you had a customer who bought all of these products and not vCF, that was for someone like us, it's like
perfect. I have all products,
hours of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can see, the man who has knowledge in vCF for 25 years, vCF is there since 2021, so it is not really now a new product. It was something which always have a little bit been under the or below the radar, because it hasn't been really, as you just mentioned before, executed from a VMware sales perspective.
Can you go down that list again? I want to check something.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, this really started with version 1.3.
Yeah, because I'm a bit confused. I mean, the 25 years was a mistake on the post, and I can certainly live with that, and I'm going to post a correction today. But I'm pretty sure that I had a presentation, and that was long before, 1 or 2 years before the pandemic, where Kit and others actually showcased vCF at a partner conference with a GA release already. And this is what confuses me now.
I think also there was some kind of version 2 already available, because we're always talking about version 1. Still, vCF nowadays is still in version 1, as you can see, but officially it is always running. The first is never counted, so this is the reason why we have now 5.1, which is internally 1.5.1. But I think this is also something which is interesting now for me, because I think there was a version 2 available, but yeah. At the end, as you can see, it is there since ages. It hasn't been utilized as much, because everyone was always concerned about the limitations and so on. And now it gets more or less executed, and it can be utilized. And from my perspective, it's a really nice idea to utilize it and consume it, especially with the new licensing stuff. It makes it really interesting from my perspective.
I think this is we will see this far more often now than we have been seeing this in the past. This version thing is driving me nuts now, so I need to figure out what exactly is going on there. Was that a preview session? I will figure out when this conference was. I know exactly where the conference was and what the topic was. I just need to find the title. It was not an Explore conference. But I really want to get behind that, because for me, that's actually, hang on a second. No. It's earlier, Toby. I'm going to trickly drop something in the chat, and because I currently can't share here really well. 1 second, then maybe you can open that knowledge base article for us.
For sure.
Yeah, Harold also posted something. So I now posted it multiple times, so just to make sure that everybody gets
it. So now we have it open on any kind on.
But that actually sounds far more true. So Harold says 2017. I haven't scrolled down the article, but even that one actually did. Yeah, this KB which I sent actually goes back to at least 2020. So I think there are earlier releases and stuff.
Has been earlier releases, but the interesting part would be when the whole validated design story kicks in, because I think then with that part, with the validated design and vCF in a combined solution, then this was the version 3 release.
Which was for a long period, is like what a lot of people actually, there was a constant discussion always who's first and who is actually going to drive it. Is like there were the VVD people, so the VMware validated design teams, and there was vCF. And it was a lot of discussions where people said, it's like, yeah, but vCF is VVD, and VVD said, and it was the other way around. Also, it's like, they also always said, it's like, hey, but in the end, VMC and other stuff is also VVD, where I said, it's like, no, it might be a special version of VVD, but it's not the default VVD.
Yeah.
So this goes back to 2020. Obviously, Harold found an earlier version, which even goes back to 2017.
Yeah.
So it is, at least because I was pretty sure that it was there before the pandemic, because that was Atlanta. After Atlanta was another conference in the US of that space, same partner, special whatsoever type.
Whatever, yeah.
So nevertheless, I think that's a good starting point, or a good point. And so I think that's it for the first page, isn't it?
That's it for the first page, absolutely.
And I would say we will actually start with the next page on the next episode.
On the next episode, that we really have a look into the prerequisite checklist. This will be our next episode.
Yes, so next episode 3 is then going to be prerequisite checklist. We are going to set up a date as soon as I have figured out my schedule for next week's conference, and we try to get that into next week. I'm still juggling with a few time zones and other things, but we will get that going. And I think it's going to be helpful for people in the end to actually really be able to walk through all of this. And again, if you want to actually learn vCF, I cannot reiterate it often enough. It's not about having a massive test cluster or a home lab or anything else. You can easily spend days in learning this Excel spreadsheet, all the dependencies, and reading through where exactly. And if you can more or less get to the point that you can actually take customer requirements and fill out the Excel spreadsheet without getting a bunch of red crosses all everywhere, is like, then you are ready to actually go somewhere else. And then there is other lab scenarios which you can also utilize. And there is still VMware hands-on labs if you want to play out with certain features. It's not, I think it doesn't have anything on the deployment, but a lot of the other things.
A lot of the other things, absolutely.
Good.
With that being said, let's have a nice one and see you in the
Call
next
it
one.
today, and I'm going on my horse again and actually riding into the.
Okay, guys, thanks for your
Thank you
attention.
all. And have a
See
good
you.
one.
Bye.
Bye.